We are recording and broadcasting. I think we're still minus Angel though.
You haven't heard from her?
I saw her earlier. She was in here. She checked her mailbox. She said she was going to be on. So I don't know what's happening.
Okay.
Just joined. We have everybody now.
Okay. County and City Council for September 14th, 2020 is now in session. Roll call, please.
Council President, Mr. Arcaro,
Present.
Mr. Emery,
Here.
Mr. Gaw,
Here.
Mr. Kozeski,
Here.
Mrs. Ledford,
Here.
Mrs. McVoy,
Here.
Mr. Moiseo,
Here.
City Manager, Mr. Hockaday,
Here.
Finance Director, Mr. Williams,
Here.
Assistant Law Director, Mr. Newcomb.
Here. Okay, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Okay, moving on to approval of the meeting minutes for August 24th, 2020. Are there any alterations or corrections? If not, roll call.
There. Sorry, do you have a motion and a second?
Oh, I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gaw,
Yes.
Mr. Kozeski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, the meeting minutes for August 24th have been approved. We have no awards presentations tonight. However, we do have a special presentation, which is a proclamation for Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. And if Mrs. O'Connell, if you could read that into the record, please.
Yes. Whereas September is Prostate Cancer Awareness and Education Month, whereas this year approximately 191,930 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer in the United States alone every year, and roughly 33,330 will die this year from the disease. Whereas in Ohio, an estimated 7,030 new cases of prostate cancer will be diagnosed and estimated 1,200 deaths will occur in 2020. Whereas men with relatives, fathers, brothers, sons with a history of prostate cancer are twice as likely to develop the disease. Whereas prostate cancer is the second leading cause of cancer death in American men, behind only lung cancer. Whereas men who served in the military who have been exposed to chemicals and herbicides are at a greater risk for developing prostate cancer. Pardon me. Whereas 1 in 9 men are diagnosed with prostate cancer in his lifetime, African American men are at the highest risk for the disease with the rate of 1 in 6 and 2.2 times more likely to die from the disease. Whereas education regarding prostate cancer and early detection strategies is critical to saving lives, preserving and protecting our families. The economic and social hardship it has on the families is huge. Prostate cancer is estimated to cost over $8 billion in direct medical expenditures, whereas nearly 3.1 million men in the U.S. are living with a prostate cancer diagnosis. That number is estimated to climb to 4 million by 2024 as men in the baby boomer generation age. Whereas all men are at risk for prostate cancer, and we encourage the citizens of the city to increase the importance of prostate screenings. The Council of the City of Conneaut, Ohio does hereby recognize the month of September as Prostate Cancer Awareness and Education Month and encourages all men, particularly those over age 50, to schedule regular appointments with their physician for appropriate prostate screening. Signed this 14th day of September 2020, John R. Carroll, President of Council.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to citizen comments. Does anybody have any citizen comments? Okay, if not, communications.
I have none.
Does council have any communications?
I'm not.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to reports for our administration, beginning with City Manager, Mr. Hockaday.
Thank you, Council President Arcaro. I have a couple things for you. Under meetings, I had a very good meeting with Ohio Department of Natural Resources regarding establishment of a water trail designation for Conneaut Creek. I have a significant amount of material to kind of transmit to council on that. And if you would be okay with this, I'd take it through the Parks Committee, Parks and Recreation Committee, and just assign that material to that committee for their review and to report back out to the rest of council. I think it's something we should do. I think we see a lot of recreational use of our creek, our river here. Whether it's steelhead fishing, whether it's kayaking or canoeing. And this would be a program that allows us to make it safer for those people who are already recreationally using the river. It also opens up some grant funding opportunities for us as well. If nobody has any objections, I would definitely like to send that over to the Parks Committee, and we can talk about that at a work session. With the county commissioners and some others regarding funding status of the dog warden. Their budget is very tight. It was a very preliminary discussion. They're still working on pulling together some of their budget numbers and figures, but they were reaching out to see if we could open up a discussion about multi-jurisdictional participation in some of those costs. I don't have any final information from the county yet, but when I do have those things, I will be sure to transmit those to council so we can have kind of a discussion of how council feels about it, so I can more fully participate in future discussions. Positive note, we have ribbon cutting coming up for Truck World on September 24th. I know they're already open. I don't know when their sign is being mounted. I don't have that information. I've had several people ask me, and I'm not quite sure. I know it's soon, and I know they're working very hard to get the large sign up. And I think it should be up by probably that 24th date. And we have invited, obviously, all of council, future council or past council members, and both school boards to participate as they joined us in getting that project done. I think it's a great project. I think they seem to be doing fairly well out there. And I wish them all the best. So that is September 24th at 3 p.m. It starts. The ribbon cutting will be at 3:30. So show up at least a half an hour early at 3 o'clock. So hopefully we can see everybody there. A brief reminder about joint school Board of Education meeting September 21st at 6 p.m. I believe that is going to be at the high school cafeteria again. Councilwoman Ledford will probably have more details on that. And the last is a shameless plug for fund, which is going to be holding some entrepreneurial classes here in Conneaut in participation with the Conneaut Public Library, Conneaut Chamber of Commerce, the Conneaut Foundation, and the Conneaut Port Authority in the city of Conneaut. Space is somewhat limited. So I would tell people it is on NeoFund's webpage, it's on the libraries, it's on the chamber, it's on the chamber website. I believe the Port Authority has it on their Facebook page as well. So there's lots of ways to figure out how to register for that class. It is open to anyone that is interested in starting a business. We anticipate that class filling up. So if people are interested, I would encourage them to look into that registration. If they have any other questions, they can call my office, 593-7401. We're happy to help you in any way we can. Conneaut Creek Dredge Material Facility. We probably ought to have a kind of a specialized session on that at some point. We have various things moving forward with that project. Design on phase 1 is complete, pending signatures and approvals. It has been sent to Canadian National for their review and approval, and it's pending that. But it is at 100% in terms of its actual design, unless there are comments or things that would change, given feedback from the many stakeholders there. OPW Chestnut Middle, we did receive back our thing on the change order to do the enhanced turn lane in front of the elementary school there, as well as realign the stormwater and bring the sidewalks up to appropriate grade so they have a full 6-inch curb. This is something I will be emailing out to all of council probably after the meeting tonight, and something that we can discuss with the schools. We also have it broken down in terms of proportionate shares between entities, how much is still covered by OPWC funds, and how much would be additional to the city through our paving program. Obviously, you know, the enhanced design is what the school would like, and I concur 100% that if we can make this happen financially, it is a much better and much safer alternative than a simple resurface there. So that's been kind of hanging out there. I know the rest of the street's been done, and great conspiracy theories out there that we didn't repave it because there's we want people to slow down on the potholes in front of the elementary school. That's not true. We're trying to do an enhancement at the request of the school district, and I think this would make a tremendous improvement. Meaning they've jetted everything. They were in the process of cutting some root intrusions into that interceptor line and doing their final filming. But for the most part, it is nearly complete or substantially complete. Route 20 phase 2 water line is just about done with drawings. I'm anticipating that if I can't get them for the meeting on the 28th, that I'll have them for the first meeting of August. Lake Road stormwater, other than restoration, is substantially complete. There were a couple things that we needed to alter at the end of that project that I'll be talking to council about at our next work session. Improvements. We have our OPWC application on for tonight. Obviously, that is about a $1.4 million project, and we're requesting $300,000 in OPWC grants for that project. And we put kind of a fixed number of $500,000 for 0% interest loan. I will explain that a little more once we get to that ordinance. And just kind of a heads up, since we have a stuff coming up after our BOE meeting on the 21st. So the meeting on the 28th, our finance director, Mr. Williams, needs our rates of resolution to be accepted at the end of this month to be compliant for submission of that by October 1st. John can touch on that a little bit later. And we have a existing Port Authority member that's requesting to be reappointed, Patrick Arcaro. His term is going to be up in the middle of October, so you'll likely see that on our meeting on the 28th as an ordinance authorizing his reappointment. And then our Huntington bond for the Route 20 design piece should be prepped and ready to go for that meeting on the 28th. We talked about that at our last work session. We're able to save a little money over the traditional ODOT SIB program that we've used in the past. The next four on there in terms of the upcoming are still in various states of readiness, kind of waiting until they're ready to bring to council. So I'll skip over those. I'm happy to answer any questions council might have. I have also attached the police monthly reports, and so fire, we're still working on theirs. They transitioned to a different reporting software this year, and this was their transition month. So I will get that to you later this week.
Mr. Hockaday, I see we have ground pavement, Harbor and State. What's the plan?
I think they're just doing some patching there.
Thank you. Been a long time needed.
Anybody else have any other questions for the city manager? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the finance director, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Arcaro. I sent council the updated our certificate of estimated resources after we submitted our tax budget. I emailed that this afternoon. Hopefully you had a chance to look at it. Basically what it is our estimated unencumbered balances that we provided to the county, along with an estimate of property tax. So we're looking at unencumbered balances of about 3.5 million, property tax collections next year of 2.5 million, other sources of about 16.3 million. So the total certification at this point, which this will change by the end of the year, but the certification at this point for next year preliminary is 22.3 million. I also sent an update on the local government fund from the county. They're estimating about 2.2 million in local government funds for next year. This could obviously vary wildly. No one really knows, but it's just an estimate at this point. Our share would be 14.12%, or about 316,000, almost 317,000. Now, last year we collected about 355,000 from the county, an additional 22,000 from the state directly. The state started that program about mid-year last year. So if we look at local government right now, we're still actually, even with all of the decreases that have been projected and have been realized through May and June, we're still in a positive from last year of about $25,000, or about 10%. Now they are projecting a 10% decrease next year, which they projected a 10% decrease this year. So far, we haven't realized that full 10%. We've collected about 260,000 year to date, compared to about 235,000 last year. As far as gas tax is concerned, we're up about 119,000 over last year. We're about 47% over last year. And we've collected almost 372,000 year to date. Income tax is a little bit different. I've been trying to keep you up to date on this on a monthly basis. Our largest 1 month decline was in April, and part of that, as I said before, is due to the extension, the deadline to July 15th. We were about 44%, down about 44% in April. On a year-to-date basis, our largest decline was in June. That was a 23% or a 20% decline, about 365,000. Now in August, we're down to about 13%. So we've actually eliminated about 72,000 of that deficit between June and August. That was after the July income tax came in through the 15th. So we're down about 13%, or about 292,000. I doubt we're going to be able to totally eliminate that by the end of the year, but at least we're moving in a positive direction. So July, the month of July, we were actually up about 22%. The month of August, we were up about 8.5%. But for year to date, as I said, we're down about 13%, or 292,000. So I will keep you up to date on that. And I think that's all I have at this time. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, any questions for the finance director? Okay, thank you. Move on to the law director, Mr. Newcomb.
No report tonight, Mr. Arcaro. Thanks.
Okay. Any questions for the law director? Okay, if not, we'll move on to reports of our standing committees. Does anybody have a committee report?
Yes, Mr. Arcaro, I have one.
Mr. Kozewski.
Thank you. On August 26th, the Public Safety Committee of City Council met. Mr. Arcaro, Mr. Moisio, Police Chief Colby, and I were present. Mr. Hockaday and Mr. Emery attended after they left the Cable Advisory Board meeting. There was a discussion of the ordinance relating to the golf carts and the operation of them on roads under 35 miles per hour. It was agreed that that should be lowered to 25 miles per hour for those roadways that would allow them to be operated on. And this was directly related to public safety. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any other committee reports? Okay, if not, move on to liaison reports.
Mr. President Arcaro, I have 2 liaison reports.
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. September 8th, I attended the Conneaut Conventions and Visitors Bureau meeting, which was their annual meeting. They recognized the Conneaut Port Authority for their progress with continuing developing and working with the city and the Conneaut Foundation. Mr. Peterson was there to receive that award. And then they also recognized Conneaut Township for also their continuation in, investing into the township there and in our community. So it was a very nice meeting. They kind of gave a heads up of what they were looking for projections of the new year and for Santa House, which they're going to still hold, hopefully with the health department's approval, to have it actually where it's a drive-through process down here at Lakeshore Park or Liberty Park. Sorry, 2 different things at one time. And then the other meeting I attended was September 9th, and that was for the Conneaut Health Department. And they just did a recap of their participation in the county COVID pop-up test site that they had participated in, which was very successful for the county. And that just to stay cognizant and continue what we're doing by masking and social distancing and washing our hands. And that's all I have for my liaisons.
Okay, thank you.
I have a liaison report as well, Mr. Arcaro.
Go ahead, Mr. Emery.
On August 26th, as Mr. Kozeski alluded to earlier, there was a cable advisory board meeting, and Mr. Hockaday attended. We spoke about the future of the cable access channel and where it's headed as far as streaming capabilities. And we spoke about some equipment updates, and that was about it.
Okay, thank you. All right, any
President
other-
Arcaro, yeah, I'm sorry, President Arcaro, I just want to make the announcement that reiterate what Mr. Hockaday said. There is a liaison meeting between us and the Conneaut Area City School Board, and it will be the 21st at 6 p.m. at the high school cafeteria. And like Mr. Hockaday said, we'll be focusing on the OPWC Chestnut Middle paving project enhancements. So if you can attend, I would appreciate it. That's all for me, President Arthur.
Okay, thank you. Any other liaison reports? Okay, if not, we'll move on to our ordinances for this evening. And we will begin with two ordinances on the table, which is 5520 and 5620. So, Mr. Hockaday, do you have any update on 5520?
I do not. There has been no further guidance issued from ODH. I know Nichelle has requested, as well as several other activities that are coming up in the near future. Nichelle did agree to attend our next either regular meeting or work session meeting in October, whichever council would prefer. I know we're going to have a forthcoming discussion about several events, including this and trick or treat. Obviously we would look for their guidance and counsel on how to do that safely and appropriately.
If she could attend the work session, that would be good.
We'll let her know.
Okay, moving on to 56-20.
An ordinance to authorize the use of golf carts and other low-speed motor vehicles and not declaring an emergency.
Okay, you heard the report from Mr. Kozeski. Are there any questions regarding that or further discussion?
I think the change to 25 miles per hour makes it a better ordinance. So I agree with that.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, Mr. Emery.
I would like to move ordinance 56-20 off the table.
So motion to move ordinance 56-20 off the table. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Mosio?
Me or Mr. Kozeski, I think we both spoke at the same time.
Okay,
Mr. Arcaro,
yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozeski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Emery, the ordinance is off the table.
I'd like to motion to amend ordinance 56-20.
So motion to amend ordinance 56-20. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Kozeski.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozeski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Emery, the ordinance has been amended.
I'd like to motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 56-20.
The motion to suspend the three reading rule on ordinance 56-20. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Goff.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
yes,
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Emery, the three reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to motion to act on ordinance 56-20.
So motion to act on ordinance 56-20. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mosio.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
yes,
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 56-20 is passed. Move on to our third reading ordinances. And we have one ordinance in third reading, 63-20.
An ordinance to amend Chapter 179 of the Conneaut Codified Ordinances governing the Cable Television Advisory Board and not declaring an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Hockaday or Mr. Emery, if you'd like to update us on that.
So we made two adjustments based on the Cable Advisory Board meeting, and those amended ordinances were emailed out to council. Just the board size to reflect what the Cable Advisory Board had in their bylaws. Our ordinances presently really read about 13 members, which there are 8 members plus a member of council. So that's now reflected in the ordinance. But that was also adjusted from what the law director had in there in the first draft. So we would need to accept an amendment on that ordinance first before accepting it. So the other thing that it amended is that it places the Cable Advisory coordinator as reportable to the city manager as opposed to council as a whole. And that just makes it more consistent with all other employees and contracts within the city. So I think they're both kind of common sense changes that are already kind of working that way. And then obviously I appreciate the Cable Advisory Board and Regis, the Cable Advisory Coordinator. We're going through a lot of changes in how we do regular business, including how we're holding this council meeting tonight via Zoom. And we've just continued to adapt to the changes that have been coming down the pipeline. And then obviously there's some forthcoming capabilities that we're looking at and being able to stream all of the cable accesses content in the future. And that'll be a major paradigm shift for us. So appreciate everybody's hard work there.
Okay, any questions or comments on ordinance 63-20? Okay, if not, Mr. Emery.
Well, I would like to amend ordinance 63-20.
So motion to amend ordinance 63-20. Is there a second?
I second,
Second by Mrs. Lickford?
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
yes,
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Emery, the ordinance has been amended.
I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 63-20.
We need to suspend first.
It's in third reading. Is that? Okay.
Once you amend, you go back to first.
Okay.
Right.
Second.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule.
So motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 63-20. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Goff.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
yes,
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Emery, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
Now I would like to make a motion to act on ordinance 63-20.
Motion to act on ordinance 63-20. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. McBoy.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
yes,
Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 53-20 is passed. And we have no ordinances in second reading. So we'll move on to first reading ordinances, which we have 8 in first reading. And we will begin with ordinance 67-20.
An ordinance to amend the 2020 budget through appropriations and fund and interfund transfers attached Tier 2 and marked Exhibit A.
Okay, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Arcaro. This budget amendment is primarily for the health department. They've requested some increases in some line items. One is a $4,500 increase for the nurse's salary, and this increase is due to COVID. Telephone communications, $1,500 increase, again, the increase due to COVID. And then the annual or additional septic permit fees of $303. So the total requested by the health department at this time is $6,303. Now they are anticipating getting, they are a subgrantee of the county. They anticipate getting some additional funding. We're just trying to work out the mechanics of it to see if they need to create a separate fund or additional line items will do. There is one other adjustment. It's in the drug task force. The net impact on the budget is 0. We're just changing the amount allocated from overtime and reimbursement to other entities. And that's a $7,000 increase in overtime and a $7,000 decrease in reimbursements to other entities. And as I said, the net impact there is 0.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments regarding ordinance 67-20? If not, I'll entertain a motion to proceed.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Kozowski.
Second.
Yeah, make,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Kozowski.
no, go ahead. That's okay. Go ahead, Terry.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Guess he's passing it on to you, Mr. Mosio.
I'm sorry.
He's passing it on to you, apparently.
Okay, is there any time constraint here? Is this something we want to pass tonight? I guess would be my question.
Just need to suspend the 3 reading rule.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on 67-20.
It's a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 67-20. Is there a second?
Oh, second.
Second by Mr. Gah.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
yes,
Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Mosio, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 67-20.
It's a motion to act on ordinance 67-20. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Mr. Emery.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
yes,
Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 67-20 is passed. Move on to ordinance 68-20.
An ordinance authorizing the finance director to certify a list of delinquent water and sewer bills to the Asheville County Auditor for real estate assessment and declaring an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. We do this every year, sometimes twice a year, for delinquent water and sewer bills. These are just unpaid bills that are going to be assessed to the property. Right now, we're looking at a little over 20 parcels for the owner occupied water and sewer for a total of $1,799.05. And then as far as non-owner occupied sewer, we're looking at about $311. So this is a relatively small amount. We've seen much larger amounts in previous years. So, but we do have to have this done by today, actually, in order to get it on the tax rolls for next year.
Okay, are there any questions or comments regarding ordinance 68-20? Now I'll entertain a motion to proceed.
I'll make a motion to declare ordinance 68-20 an emergency.
Okay, there's a motion to declare ordinance 68-20 an emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gah?
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
And Mrs. Ledford, the emergency has been declared.
At this time, I'd like to waive the 3 reading rule for ordinance 68-20.
So motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 68-20. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mosio.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
And Mrs. Ledford, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to act on ordinance 68-20.
So motion to act on ordinance 68-20. Is there a second?
A second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Emery.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
The ordinance 68-20 is passed. Move on to ordinance 69-20.
An ordinance to create line item 551-355-59300 transfers and to appropriate $7,077.49 to said line item.
Okay, Mr. Williams, you want to reiterate anything?
Yeah, the next 2 ordinances are related. We've discussed this a number of times, but it is the Special Assessment Debt Retirement Fund. It has a deficit right now of $7,077.49. This is the last year of any activity on this fund. It is not going to collect any more revenue nor pay any more debt. But in order to correct this deficit, and it is a sewer debt, we're going to have to create this line item in the sewer department and appropriate that $7,077.49 to that line item. The next ordinance will actually authorize, or council will authorize the transfer of that cash to this fund to correct that deficit.
Okay, any questions or comments for Mr. Williams? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to proceed.
Mr. Arcaro, waive the 3 reading rule on 69-20.
Okay, there's a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 69-20. Is there a second?
I will second.
Second by Mr. Gah.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Mosio, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I would like to make a motion to act on 69-20.
Motion to act on ordinance 69-20. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Mrs. Ledford.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 69-20 has passed. We'll move on to ordinance 70-20.
An ordinance to transfer a total of $7,077.49 from 551-355-59300 transfers within the sewer fund to the following fund in the amount listed in section 1.
Okay, is there a motion to proceed?
I motion to waive the 3 reading rule on ordinance 70-20.
Okay, there's a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 70-20. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Mrs. McBoy.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
yes,
Mr. Kozowski?
yes,
Mrs. Ledford?
yes,
Mrs. McBoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
yes,
Okay, Mr. Emery, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I motion to act on ordinance 70-20.
So motion to act on ordinance 70-20. Is there a second?
second,
Second by Mr. Goff.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
yes,
Mr. Kozowski?
yes,
Mrs. Ledford?
yes,
Mrs. McBoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
yes,
Okay, ordinance 70-20 has been passed. Move on to ordinance 71-20.
An ordinance declaring the advances listed in section 1 below permanent transfers totaling $72,906.57.
Okay, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Arcaro. This is, of course, this is all related to the Special Assessment Debt Retirement Fund. In previous years, because some property owners did not pay their special assessments for sewer improvements, we had to advance monies from the sewer fund to the Special Assessment Debt Retirement Fund. So we transferred advanced about 23,000 in 2013, a little over 10,000 in 14, 30,000 in 15, and about 9,000 in 16. So the total was 72,906.57. The reason we advanced it is because we didn't know if at some point we were going to collect those funds, and we didn't want to make it a permanent transfer. Now that we know that there's no chance that this is going to be collected, we're just converting these amounts that have actually been advanced. The cash has been advanced to this fund. We're just converting them to a permanent transfer. The auditors are requiring that we do this, and it's just a standard accounting procedure.
Okay, any questions or comments on ordinance 71-20? Okay, if not, is there a motion to proceed?
Mr.
I'll make
Arcaro,
the motion. Oh. Who wants to go?
you can, I'll make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on 71-20.
There's a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 71-20. Is there a second?
I'll
I would-
second.
Second by Mrs. Ledford.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
yes,
Mr. Kozowski?
yes,
Mrs. Ledford?
Yes,
Mrs. McBoy?
Yes.
Moiseo?
Yes,
Okay, Mr. Mosio, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to make a motion to act on 71-20.
So motion to act on ordinance 71-20. Is there a second?
I will second,
Second by Mr. Goff.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Gah?
yes,
Mr. Kozowski?
yes,
Mrs. Ledford?
yes,
Mrs. McBoy?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes,
Okay, ordinance 71-20 is passed. Move on to ordinance 72-20.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to apply for and enter into an OPWC grant agreement in the amount of 50% of an estimated cost of $382,280 for the Gateway Avenue resurfacing project and declaring an emergency.
Hey, Mr. Hockaday?
Thank you, Mr. Arcaro. So we have two OPWC applications that are around 35. Typically, we make these applications in June, but due to delays related to COVID, we're doing them now. This is technically a pre-application. Just out of habit more than anything, I do like to make our pre-applications full applications so we don't have to circle back and do it later in the year. So in this case, this is a resurfacing of Gateway from Route 7 east to Dorman Road. There are a couple areas where that road that was constructed for the schools has started to destabilize. The soil conditions are very poor out there. So there's a lot of full depth repair that is in this, as well as the signals don't rely on sensor detectors. They use signal loop detectors that are actually matted in the asphalt itself, and those will need to be replaced. So this is probably a more expensive than normal resurfacing, but that's due to some special conditions out there. This would be our second out application. In other words, if we were given the choice between the two applications, we would accept the one for the water treatment facility filter replacement project, which we will do next, is the next ordinance. So here we're using road levy funds as our leverage on this. So we're using our existing road levy funds and extending those so we can do more resurfacing. It would be my anticipation that we would be able to complete this project plus some other roads in this 2022. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions or comments on ordinance 72-20? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to proceed.
I'll make a motion to declare ordinance 7220 an emergency.
Okay, there's a motion to declare ordinance 72-20 an emergency. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Goff.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Ledford, the emergency has been declared.
This time I'd like to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 7220.
The motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 72-20. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. McCoy.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Ledford, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to act on ordinance 7220.
So motion to act on ordinance 72-20. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Mr. Emery.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 72-20 is passed. Move on to ordinance 73-20.
An ordinance authorizes the city manager to apply for and enter into an OPWC grant agreement in the sum of $300,000 and OPWC 0% loan not to exceed $500,000 on behalf of the city of Conneaut, Ohio for the water treatment plant filter replacement project and declaring an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Hockaday.
Okay, this is a much larger project and related to our water treatment facility. Total estimated cost, engineering and construction is $1,888,500. So almost $1.5 million. This has been a project we've been working towards for about 4 years now. This would replace the filter media in the filtration room It would replace the media and the under drains with low profile under drains, which will allow us to add additional media and high rate those filters for a better, more efficient processing of drinking water. That will assist in future maintenance activities because we will be able to support production on just 2 of the 4 filters, allowing us to alternate them for maintenance purposes. In addition to that, we also have our low service pumps, which we should be fairly familiar with the low service pumps. This one almost went in Lake Erie before we put the armor stone around it. The pumps in there are direct drives, they're static drives. This project would replace those with variable frequency drives and allow us to, one, save a lot of money on our utility, but also better control our induction and flow, prevent issues like frazzle icing in our intake line, among other things. It does also include PLC controllers and SCADA systems for our drinking water facility that will then tether to what we've already done in our towers and pump stations. And lastly, it will allow us to have a valve turning machine that will allow us to become compliant with the state mandate of a valve turning program. The grant request with OPWC is for $300,000 in grant and $500,000 in 0% interest loan. That is kind of a give or take number. So it could be less than that. It depends on what is available within the district if we are awarded. So that number could come in lower. I wanted to be able to potentially cover any of the money that we're going to receive. And we already have a Worsla loan locked in for the total value of this project. However, the Worsla loan is 0% for anything that is related to harmful algal bloom, and at a low income rate for which I believe is 1.65% for anything not related to that. So our total project, when approved by OWDA and the Worsla loan program, is actually what they call a blended rate. So it comes back at 0.66. What I'm attempting to do with this OPWC grant is replace those items that are not at 0% within the Worsla loan and replace it with 0% loan through OPWC. So that's the goal. This is obviously our priority project. We need to be able to move forward on this. I was genuinely hoping in 2020 we would also have a CDBG round available for this project to further offset its cost because it is very sizable. Obviously, 2020 has not allowed that to happen, and I'm not quite sure what is happening at all with CDBG programming this year. So we need to continue to move forward. So this is our priority project and one that we need to bring into construction in 2021.
Any questions or comments on 73-20? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to proceed.
I'll make a motion to declare 7320 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 73-20 an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. McVoy.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
yes,
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Mosio, the emergency has been declared.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on 73-20.
The motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on ordinance 73-20. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Gah.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
yes,
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Mosio, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
Make a motion to act on 73-20.
So motion to act on ordinance 73-20. Is there a second?
a second,
Second by Mrs. Ledford.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 73-20 has passed. Move on to ordinance 74-20.
An ordinance to reappoint Beth Church and Diana McKenna to the Board of Tax Review for a period of 2 years, effective September 1st, 2020, and ending August 31st, 2022, and declaring an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Hockaday.
This is an on-demand board that hears income tax appeals. So frequently they may go a year without having an appeal. We have received a few appeals this year, and we need to reappoint both Beth Church and Diana McKenna, who have both agreed to continue to serve on this board. I'd like to thank Babs Legeza, who's my appointee to the board, and she agreed to continue on the board as well. Certainly a thankless board, so I appreciate their efforts in what is a very technical appeal process. So I do appreciate it, and look forward to continue to work with them.
Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to proceed.
I'd like to declare ordinance 74-20 an emergency.
There's a motion to declare ordinance 74-20 an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Goff.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
And Mr. Emery, the emergency has been declared.
I'd like to suspend the 3 reading rule for ordinance 74-20.
There's a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 74-20. Is there an emergency? I mean, is there a second? We already have an emergency.
Second.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Mosio.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Emery, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
Thank you. I would like to act on ordinance 74-20.
Motion to act on ordinance 74-20. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Goff.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy, Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 74-20 has passed. That concludes our ordinances for this evening. Now move on to unfinished and old business. Okay, hearing none, move on to miscellaneous business.
I have one thing.
Mr. Emery.
I would just like to say that, a couple weeks ago, there was a protester in town. And I just want to say that I appreciate what our police department does to protect people who choose to exercise their First Amendment rights in the city. And I will support people exercising their First Amendment rights in the city. Obviously, as long as it's done appropriately. But I just wanted to give thanks to the police department being willing to accept this and to recognize the person that's willing to stand up and protest.
Okay, anybody else for miscellaneous business?
I was just gonna say, I second that, Mr. Emery. I totally agree.
Okay, anybody else for miscellaneous business? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mosio.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, the council session for September 14, 2020 is adjourned. Thank you all and be safe.
Good night, all.
Thank you, everyone.